Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we throw a bike off a cliff, because this week we watched The Woman Who Fell to Earth.
Written by Chris Chibnall.
Directed by Jamie Childs.
And aired on October 7th, 2018.
We're finally in the contemporary era. We're watching the most recently aired season of Doctor Who.
Heck yeah,
relative
for the first
to the
time.
episode. And that'll only be true for the next 4 weeks, maybe not even.
Did they even announce when they're going to start?
New Year's Day.
New Year's Day.
We will still be like deep in Series 11 when that happens.
So we still have a New Year's special, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's special that like the new season is coming out on New Year's Day.
All right, I'll give you that, you know. It's kind of a stretch, but I'll give you that one.
And, you know, there's actually a lot of special things about this new season of Doctor Who. First of all, it's the first season of Doctor Who featuring a female doctor, a.k.a. the 13th Doctor, a.k.a. Jodie Whittaker.
Right.
A.k.a. Jodie, the first female Doctor Whittaker.
Or Jodie FFD for short. Damn, we should have watched the reveal video before watching this episode, but oh well.
No, I'm okay not watching the reveal video. I'm totally okay with not watching
You're
that.
okay with not watching Doctor Who ever again. So
Wait, what? When did I say that?
I don't know. I just feel like you'd be okay if we just stopped right now. If we just stopped the podcast right now and never watched Doctor Who again.
I guess. I mean, wouldn't be the end of the world. It kind of suck to get this far and not catch up. But, you know.
It'd be the biggest, like, middle finger to our fans.
Get one episode away from catching up and just end.
Just stop. Just be like, yep, well.
We're done here. Looks like we've accomplished what we set out to do.
It's what the podcast always aimed to do. It was, that was our ulterior plan the whole time. We just didn't tell any of you guys. Right. Well, anyway, Chris Chibnall said going into the season that there were going to be some changes to the show, and the first of which is that we've only got 10 episodes a season now, but they're each 10 minutes longer.
Yeah. This is like those companies that like make their employees work like 10-hour days and then take Friday off, you know?
Hasn't that been shown to be like... Hasn't it been shown that you only really get like 3 hours of good work in each workday? So doesn't that like just cut the company's actual good work hours by like a lot, but is apparently way better for like the employees' mental health from what I read?
I don't know. I mean, you seem to know like way more about it than me, so let's just go with that.
Okay.
I actually read that like it takes 30 minutes, not just in like a work setting, but like when it takes 30 minutes to like really get into doing something. Like when you set out to do something, you're not fully in that zone until 30 minutes go by, then you're there.
Must be why when I take finals, I never do like any actual work till 15 minutes into the final. I just kind of stare at the problems and go, yeah, I think I know how to do this. Just not ready yet. Just gonna wait for the time.
Wow. Last 3 seconds. Oh shoot, not done yet.
And I think if you do the math out, the 10 episodes of 10 extra minutes comes out to be like over the course of the season only 12 or 15 minutes shorter. But it feels a lot shorter because it's less episodes.
Well, this episode is actually longer than that. This one's actually almost an hour.
It's over an hour, I think.
Oh,
like just over.
yeah.
I think it's like 61 minutes or 62.
Yeah, something like that.
So,
I mean, I don't have any more making of stuff, unfortunately. I feel like there probably was stuff out there, but I neglected to look anything up.
Yeah, Chibnall said like going into the season that he wanted it to be more of an ensemble kind of show. He wanted to have this, multiple TARDIS companions that all get kind of a little bit of focus and Yaz.
Well, I mean, based on what you said about Yaz 3 minutes before we started recording, I guess she doesn't get her time in the sun. But just based on having watched this episode, this is one of the best TARDIS crews in a long while. This is actually something I wanted to talk about at the end, but since we're on the topic, might as well just shove it in here. This group of companions plus Doctor so far is great, and I feel they're focusing way more on like the actual character and human aspect of these characters rather than just like they're like a plot device, like the girl who waited and the impossible girl and Bill who has contact with Heather, this extra dimensional being, and Nardole who's like an alien and has his own plans and is part of the vault thing. But like I don't know, I feel like these are more down to earth, Russell T-esque. Like
That's what you're saying now.
No, it does feel like a return to like that 2005 to 2010 era where it's like the companions are like human beings. But like with even more like human emotion driven in, with Ryan and his like relationship with his grandparents, his step-granddad and Graham. And then, Yaz, who has less admittedly in this episode and probably has less throughout the season.
Yeah, because when you really think about it, you're like, what is Yaz's relation to all these other people? Ryan's like, I think she's like conspicuous by her lack of relation to the other people because Ryan is like explicitly Graham's step-grandson. And there's like that whole dynamic where Graham's like, when is he going to call me granddad? Like, we've been married for 3 years. Like, I've been basically his granddad for 3 years.
But also doesn't feel... I don't know, I didn't get the impression that Graham and Ryan had the best relationship, obviously because of Ryan, but also I think because of Graham as well.
Yeah, but that's like what I'm saying, like what is Yaz's whole relation to this? She's just a cop who like answered the call,
well, she knew,
so to speak,
she knew
Ghostbusters.
Ryan. Wow. She knew Ryan, as kids.
And they didn't recognize each other, so that just shows like how much they cared about each other in elementary school, I guess.
Exactly, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I guess we can get into the episode proper, which doesn't have a title sequence, so we can't talk about the title sequence yet.
Yeah, and I remember back in October of last year, people were really bummed out that they had to wait another week to hear the intro theme.
Oh no! Well, you can hear it during the credits. You just have to watch the credits that nobody wanted to do, I guess.
Well, maybe it was like see the intro with the music playing.
Yeah, I think that was more it. Yeah, we don't even see the TARDIS in this episode, so we can't even talk about that either.
Yeah, and I know what the new TARDIS looks like, or I remember seeing it from last year, but I don't remember. I don't remember what it looks like. I remember that at one point I knew what it looked like, and I don't even know what the new or the intro thing sounded like or sounds like. But I already forgot.
Great.
So.
I just, like in the middle of the week when you texted me, I miss Murray Gold. Good.
It was more yesterday or like 2 days ago.
It was 2 days ago, I think. 3 days ago.
Whatever, whenever I
Thursday,
watched the episode. And yeah, I do miss Murray Gold. Segun Akinola, is that how you pronounce his name? I don't know. I'll look it up between this week and next week. His score is just not doing it for me. I like some of the more ambient music. I'm glad for that addition to the show.
Mm-hmm.
But when it actually goes melodic is when things start to fall apart and it starts to sound like a Kickstarter video. It's true. It's true.
Oh no. I have no strong feelings either way. It's very different than what we've had before. And that's not necessarily either good nor bad.
It's
neither
bad,
good nor bad.
in my opinion.
Well, let's just give it a couple more
bad.
weeks before you make your final judgment.
I've made my final judgment.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Prematurely.
Okay. All right.
But it's there.
All right. So the episode begins with Ryan doing a vlog, and he's like, I'm going to talk about the most incredible woman I've ever met. And you're like, it's going to be the Doctor, isn't it? Stay tuned.
That's what I thought. But no. And then we cut to him like on a very like picturesque hill, like overlooking, Sheffield, but it's not like an industrial like metropolis. It's more of a small town vibe. Mm-hmm. I don't know how big Sheffield is. I imagine it's fairly large. But it's a very picturesque setting with the sunset going on, and he's trying to ride a bike, and his grandmother and step grandfather are there. We're introduced to Grace or Gracie and Graham.
Yeah. Grace and Graham, G&G, GG. And they're trying to teach Ryan how to ride a bike because he's like, I'm 19 and I don't know how to ride a bike. It's like, well, that sucks. But
We learn later on in the episode that this is due to his
dyspraxia.
physical, disability, dyspraxia, whatever.
Dyspraxia. It's a P, like parenthood. Don't know why that was the first P word I thought of. P is in pterodactyl.
Just like spell something, but give all the words to describe the sounds as like with silence. K is in like knowledge.
There's a comedian who has a bit about this who's like, it's always so stressful when I call like the airline and I have to give them my confirmation code and I'm like trying to think of words and it's like P as in pterodactyl, M as in pneumonia.
There's a Family Guy bit where like the bit that they do in a lot of TV shows and movies where like the person's trying to give a fake name and they just look around them to like think of things to like give us their name.
Like the doctor did and Jamie did when he needed to give the doctor a fake name. Remember, that's how he actually came up with John Smith, is he just saw it written on like something nearby and was like, he's John Smith.
There's a Family Guy bit where Peter Griffin is trying to give a fake name and he sees a pea, like the vegetable, and he's like, pea, and he sees someone crying, he goes, tear, and he sees a griffin, like the mythological creature, and he goes, Griffin, Peter Griffin. One of the few like funny things that I can actually remember from Family Guy. The other one is when they're doing I don't know why I'm going so deep into this, but the other one is when they're going through like a montage of people just hating on Meg, and it's just people hating on her, and then the final one is just Meg walks up to Peter and she's like, "Hey, Dad," and he just pulls out a gun and shoots her face.
I just remember that scene where Lois is running for, I don't remember, city council or something, and she gives this whole speech and no one cares, and she just goes, 9/11 was bad, and everyone's like, woo, woo. Anyway, so Ryan is like, screw this. He throws his bike off the cliff, and they're like, well, you're on your own because we've got to catch a train.
Well, yeah, so they cut forward, probably a few minutes to them just kind of sitting on the cliff being like, well, now what do we do? And they have to catch this train. And Gracie's like, don't worry, Ryan. Like, I'm sure you'll learn how to ride a bike, sometime. Or, eventually if you keep trying. And I was like, yeah, if you ever find the bike and, like, if it's still in usable condition after he just chucked it off,
But he does find it, but he also finds a blinking light, and he touches it.
Yeah, so, this is Doctor Who now for a modern era, right? There's branding and logos, like, in the woods. Nowhere is safe from multinational capitalism and corporate greed.
Blade Runner.
So yeah, he touches this symbol, this holographic thing, and it turns into like a bulb.
Yeah.
Looks like sort of a
plant bulb.
Yeah. But it's all blue.
And then he touches that too, because he just can't stop touching things.
And his hand starts dissolving. He's like, no.
Well, it's at like sub-zero temperatures, so I'm surprised he didn't have like freezer burn on his hands.
So he calls the police.
And then we meet Yaz. She's sorting out a parking dispute between two middle-aged suburban moms who like...
We don't know that they're suburban moms.
They look like they live in suburbia.
Okay, maybe, yeah, they're middle-aged, they're suburban, but we don't know whether or not they're moms.
Okay, you're right. That the mom bit was an assumption I made. I apologize. That two middle-aged suburban white females, and one of them, when they were parking, scratched the other one's door, and then in response, she took a hammer to the person's windshield. And Yaz is like, why?
Well, Yaz sort of tells them off. She's like, two functioning adults shouldn't have to call the police to sort out, their own personal issues. So how about we just decide to, you pay the price of the scratch and you fix this person's windshield.
I feel like the price of the scratch is going to be way less than the price of the windshield.
Probably.
The person who broke the windshield at this point is like, damn, like really got shafted in this deal.
Well, I kind of just want to stop for a minute and kind of talk about Yaz and this whole dynamic. I really like this sort of her telling them off for this because she's like, two adults shouldn't have to call the police for a small sort of dispute like this and shouldn't really have to, just go this far with each other. It's just a scratch. Things happen. But I kind of liked how this played with Ryan's character because we kind of get at the beginning that Ryan is like, somewhat childish. He vlogs, which isn't necessarily like a childish thing. I mean, many people of all ages vlog.
Yeah,
but
saying the guy who has a podcast.
No, but I mean, like, when you think about, well, maybe this is just like the YouTube of like, because Ryan is on YouTube. That's where we see his vlog. Maybe this is just like the YouTube of like 10 to 15 years ago. But, you think of YouTube and like it's like a kid's site. And again, maybe that was just like 10 years ago.
Didn't the guy who got with the paving stone and Love and Monsters also have a YouTube channel? Maybe they can do a collab video sometime.
Well, we sort of get a lot of this information that kind of builds up this idea that Ryan is childish, right? Like he can't ride a bike. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he's the one calling the cops for like an actual issue. Like something he can't just sort out on his own. So I kind of like that sort of subtle, I don't know, hint that like Ryan, isn't in the same league as these two people who kind of just get at each other's throats over nothing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I actually kind of like that. We talked last week, I think 2 weeks ago, about like how a lot of the subtlety of the show seemed to have been thrown out the window with the Stephen Moffat era, and I think some of that is evidently being brought back here.
Mm-hmm. That's something I want to talk about near the end of the season, that perhaps it was too subtle. Like, perhaps we went too far in the other direction.
Perhaps.
This season.
Perhaps. I also just want to touch on one more thing about Yaz's character. Her holier-than-thou attitude kind of reminds me of Clara, the best new Who companion. Clara, the best new Who companion, Oswald, you might call her.
But she's already got a middle name, and it's Oswin.
Is that really her
Yeah, her name was Clara Oswin Oswald.
No. Well, okay. I didn't have anything else to say about that.
Well, so Yaz shows up, and she's like, yo.
We find out that Yaz and Ryan knew each other in primary school, a.k.a. the British interpretation of elementary school.
But they didn't recognize each other.
No.
Yaz only recognizes Ryan because he says his name is Ryan Sinclair, and she's like, Ryan, it's me, Yasmin Khan. And Ryan's like, wow, weird.
So we find out that Ryan is a warehouse worker. But he's like training to be a mechanic or something, or it's like his dream to be a mechanic. So, but I don't know. I feel like this is another thing that kind of contributes to like this idea that Ryan is like childish or whatever. Because like straight out of high school, he just goes into like warehouse work.
Says the guy who went straight into warehouse.
Well, that's why I say it is like I went straight into warehouse work. And yeah, I don't know.
Nothing bad about warehouse work.
No, it's actually really fun. It's really fun.
Good money.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just. It's interesting that he works in a warehouse and wants to be a mechanic. Like with his dyspraxia, I guess with his like motor coordination disease, I guess, or
I think it's a disorder.
Disorder that like he can do the physical activity required in warehouse work, I guess, without, because the way
severely injuring himself.
Yeah, because like when he was riding the bike, it was like pretty clear that he had like motor coordination problems. So
right.
It's just interesting to me that he works in a warehouse, given that.
Yeah. I somehow doubt we're ever gonna like follow up on this like profession of his. Maybe the mechanic thing, sure, but anyway. Yaz has absolutely no idea what's going on, but they
well, we like cut away from them for a second because Grace and Graham are on the train and they get this noodle monster like attacks the train.
Well, it appears that there's like a train crash, and then this like floating ball of like eels attacks.
It's Colony Sarf.
Had a name, huh?
No, I'm making a reference to the snake person in Magician's Apprentice who comes to find the Doctor and bring him to Davros.
Oh.
His name was like Colony Sarf or something.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I misheard you.
But then,
actually.
like, right at this moment when they're about to get attacked, it's the Gathering Coils by the Gathering Coil. Guess who should fall through the roof but Jodie Whittaker as the
famous
Doctor.
actor Jodie Whittaker.
Famous
it's not
actress.
The 13th Doctor.
The real-life actress, Jodie Whittaker. Man, Doctor Who should do an episode like Ocean's 12 where the Doctor's just like, hey, I look a lot like Jodie Whittaker, and then she pretends to be Jodie Whittaker.
Wow. Yeah, they should do that.
I'd be like, bravo, Chibnall, bravo.
But the Doctor is suffering from regeneration weirdness.
Yeah, I mean, like every regeneration episode, she's like, she doesn't remember who she is.
Right, she knows she's looking for someone called the Doctor, but she doesn't really know who that is.
But she disables the Gathering Coil for a moment, and then it kind of zaps all of them and flies away. And the Doctor's like, well, that was weird. And Graham's like, yeah. And Grace is like, it was weird, but I want to know what's going on. So the Doctor, well, they also call Yaz and Ryan, which is, so they also show up, like, right when the Gathering Coil zaps all of them, basically.
Yeah, apparently the location where the bike fell in the woods is pretty near the track.
Pretty near not only the track, but, like, where the train was on the track, because it looked like they'd been on the train for a little while now, which, like, you'd assume would put them, like, some ways out of town.
Well, it's like, maybe it's like you gotta drive to the other end of town to get on the train to come all the way back to where you were.
What?
Because you were on the other end of town, you know?
What?
Makes sense. But I just want to mention here that for, like, I think probably the third time ever, we get the Doctor Who theme in the actual episode.
Yeah, like when she falls through the roof, I think it is, when she first shows up.
Yeah, I remember the first instance of this being in Meglos.
Yes.
When Dudley Simpson just randomly decided to throw it in for, like, the first time ever. And there was another time it happened. It was in the new series. I don't remember exactly which story it was.
I don't remember.
And then if those are the two I remember catching. So if there aren't any more, then this is the third time.
I was surprised to hear it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because it's like so rarely ever actually in the show.
Yeah, and I know we've mentioned this before, but like as the only real memorable piece of music from Doctor Who's like 50 plus year history, it's weird to me that isn't
I am
used
the Doctor,
anymore. The Ballad for 10 or whatever it was called. But the Doctor calls Yaz and Ryan useless and starts trying to gather information. Mm-hmm. One thing we learn about the 13th Doctor here is that she doesn't trust cameras when she has seen the thing she needs to investigate with her own eyes. Yet at the same time, we find out in a few minutes, she does trust photographic evidence when she hasn't seen the thing with her own eyes. Which is interesting to me.
I mean, I guess the point is kind of like, if we saw it with our own eyes, what's the point of looking at the footage? Like, we saw it already. It's just a waste of time.
Yeah, exactly. So this one way you could kind of read this is that, like, she doesn't like tech, but then that other scene comes up in, a minute or two where it's like, okay, she just doesn't like the fact that, Yaz wants to interpret all this through the cameras when she actually just saw it with her own eyes.
One guy just, like, leaves. Just one guy on the train. The Doctor's like, stick with me and you'll get answers. And the guy's like, yeah, I don't want answers, so I'm just going to go to work now. Bye.
Well, Grace and Graham actually are totally on board with the whole alien thing, as is Ryan. Yaz, it seems, needs a little more convincing, but they're all pretty easily swayed by the idea.
Graham's not super on board yet because he's like, we don't get aliens in Sheffield, but in like 10 minutes.
It's more of a London thing.
I guess he's just forgetting that time that, like, Westminster Abbey got crashed into by that alien spaceship. Throwback to the farting monsters of the Vessel T era that never got as big as the Weeping Angels.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Bummer.
As Crinoid Podcast never fails to mention on their Twitter, the Slovene just kind of suck.
They came the closest to, like, just dominating England without, like, being stopped, like, out of any aliens since. They literally took over the government, and the Doctor had no idea what was going on until, like, halfway through the second episode.
No, the Master took over the government as well. Remember when he just gassed like Parliament or whatever it was, or that chamber?
He got elected to prime minister though.
Exactly, and that's why he is superior to the Slovene, because he went through legal channels and he got away with
The
it.
Slovene is superior because they didn't monologue and destroy their own plan. They just got destroyed by like the sheer unluckiness of the Doctor happening to be in the closet when they were talking and revealed themselves to be aliens. Literally, if that hadn't happened, the Doctor would be like, "What's even going on?" And the Master had to like scoop up the Doctor and like monologue his plan to him and just.
So what you're saying here is that monologuing is a bad idea and ruins evil plans every time.
Haven't we gone over this on the show before?
Just making sure.
So the Doctor...
All 5 of them go to investigate the bulb.
Right. And
it's
it's not
missing.
there.
Right.
It's been taken by this guy who had a name, but it doesn't matter because he like
it's
dies
Rahul.
in his second scene.
Yeah, it's Rahul. Rahul takes it into his like garage, warehouse thing area, which we find out later is where he's been operating his
Conspiracy theory.
workshop. And he essentially tells the other guy who's with him to leave, and
Right.
he tapes a bunch of cameras to the surrounding pillars and just sits down and starts watching the bulb.
And then it opens. And Rahul's like, "Where's my sister? Tell me where my sister is." And this Iron Man looking fellow just kills Rahul.
Right.
And is
Sort
like,
of a
"You'll never
a
know."
Venom like interpretation of Iron Man, if that makes sense. He's what Venom,
Venomized Iron Man.
he's to Iron Man what Venom is to Spider-Man. You know?
Yeah, we'll go with that. And then the Doctor, she needs like she needs medical assistance because she ends up just passing out. Well, they like split up to go look for details on alien stuff, and Graham's like, "I'll go ask the bus drivers. If you want to know where something is, you just ask the bus drivers." And if we learned anything from Wilf in the Russell T eras, if you want to know anything, actually, you ask the old pensioners who ride the bus.
Oh yeah.
They find the Doctor in like 10 minutes in that episode.
Yeah, so they all go information gathering, and we find out that that Gracie is a nurse.
Yeah.
And at this point in the episode, I have to say I really thought we were, getting that sort of season 1 thing where it's like we have characters like Mickey and we have characters like Jackie who are going to be part of the team, but sort of are going to stay on Earth and just sort of be backup like Jackie and Mickey were. But no.
You thought that until Grace brutally dies at the end of the episode.
Did not see that coming whatsoever.
Nobody did.
I thought she was going to be like the Jackie of this season, like I knew Graham actually was part of the team, but I thought Gracie was just going to stay on Earth. And
Graham's my favorite of the 3, just saying.
I like Ryan the most so far.
So far, but
yeah,
by the end of the season, Graham was my favorite, bar none. Except in the final episode. It's kind of weird.
I want to say this again here because I don't think I drove home the point enough before. Is like I think these 3, Ryan, Yaz, and Graham, especially Ryan, I would say, are like some of the best companions in a long while. Or like the best team.
I feel like maybe you're conflating most fleshed out with best, because I would agree that they've definitely got the most fleshed out backstories and like the most fleshed out character interactions in this episode. But like whether or not they're actually like the best, I think depends on what they actually do.
That's why I'm calling them the best as of this time, as of now, because I haven't watched past this episode, of course.
Well, the Doctor passes out.
Right.
Grace takes her to her house, and then she wakes up and she's like, "Who woke me up? It's too early. I'm not ready." Still regenerating. And then they find bombs implanted in all the collarbones.
Right, DNA bombs that, at some point will melt their DNA or something.
Yes.
Killing them.
And they're like, "Well, Great. How long? Graham is like really concerned about this, like as concerned as everybody else should be, because everybody else just brushes this off, and Graham's like, wait, like how long do we have? Could these go off like right now? Like what's happening?
Well, the doctor's like, yeah, could go off like 2 minutes from now.
Graham's like, what? What are we doing about it? The doctor's like, don't worry about it.
Meanwhile, the alien that emerged from the pod is killing people. We see a guy littering. Guy who I guess really doesn't like vegetables because it turns out
definitely drunk.
Whatever he's eating, he's just throwing all the lettuce off of it.
Definitely drunk, throwing his salad on the floor.
Maybe he's just like a weird dude, you know.
He throws his salad at Iron Man. He says something like, "Take my salad, Halloween." I remember this was a big meme after this episode aired for a solid week. Everyone on Twitter was like, "Salad guy is my spirit animal," and I was like, "Well, okay."
The quality of memes has really dropped in like the last couple of years.
Also, so the doctor basically, she reformats Ryan's phone and he's like, oh, my pictures are on there, and she really happily goes, not anymore. So she uses it to track.
Yeah, you know, sorry to interrupt here, but I just thought of this. Like, he probably had all of his pictures of his grandmother like on his phone, and now he doesn't. Now he doesn't. Wow.
But she tracks the signal to where the bulb was, where it opened. And she's like, well, there's not much we can do here. So she decides to build a sonic screwdriver because she lost the other one.
Right. Well, she's like, you know, I think I'm smart. I think I can, you know, put something together with the tech that's lying around here. And this is where we cut to like this montage where this is where I feel that like the music was just like, all right, this is like a Kickstarter video. And she starts creating a time flow analog, and no, I'm kidding. But yeah, this is where I really, you know, this is where it's like, all right, documentary music or, you know, like ad music. Essentially. But we also get in this scene Ryan and Yaz discussing, like, do you believe she's an alien? She's like, yeah, I do. How about you? And he's like, yeah, I do.
Then they're like, okay, cool. Got me on the same page.
They look over their shoulders and see a computer monitor, and they get closer, and there's a little video called If I Die, Click Here. So they play it, and it turns out that it's Rahul describing the disappearance of his sister like 10 years ago and how he knows she was abducted by aliens and how he's been gathering clues. And, you know, the bulb was finally, you know, where he kind of put everything together and you know, was about to confront his sister's kidnappers, but died, of course.
Mm-hmm. And so they show this to the doctor, and she's like, huh, that's kind of weird that this has happened before. She uses the sonic to track down the tentacle monster, so they find it and they disable it, and she scans it, and she realizes that it's this thing called a gathering coil, which is like designed to gather information, but then like a whole bunch of them strung together into one super gathering coil.
Right, so the whole purpose of this, because before the doctor had suggested that it was a real Men in Black scenario where two alien races were going to use Earth as a battleground, but now she kind of reevaluates that idea.
Especially when Iron Man shows up and he's like, hey, give me that back. And they're like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Tim Shaw. But the doctor just calls him Tim Shaw. He's part of a race called the Stenza.
Right, he unmasks himself. And, well, the doctor questions why he removed, you know, the tooth that he removed from, was it Rahul?
Yeah, because they find his, like, smoldering corpse, or his pile of ashes. No, it's like his smoldering corpse in the warehouse, and there's a tooth missing.
And he unmasks himself, and he just has, like, teeth all over his face.
Yeah, the Stenza wear the teeth of their kills, I guess, like
right.
Trophies.
Yeah, so the backstory here, or sort of like the character, I guess, of the Stenza people is that they're kind of like the Predators from Predator. They prove themselves using Earth as like a hunting ground. Their task, their like coming of age task, is to hunt down a mark and bring it back to their planet.
Right, but they don't get told who it is. They have to figure it out. They're like given clues to figure it out. But Tim Shaw cheated and sent the gathering coil ahead of him to find the mark
Right,
before he got there.
which the Doctor mocks him about openly.
And she figures out he cheated because he says like no weapons are out, no outside weapons are allowed. You have to kill them like by hand. And she's like, well, how'd you kill the other ones? He's like, we live at temperatures like well below what you guys are used to. So like you just touch my suit and you basically die.
Yeah, real ambassadors of death type situation here.
And so he takes the coil and he leaves, but the Doctor is able to like decipher the information from the coil because Tim Shaw just kind of downloads the information and he leaves, and the Doctor's able to like reconstruct it, and she finds out that the target was the guy on the train.
Yeah, Carl.
Who's like a crane operator.
Yeah, we cut to like this really ironic like scene where he is in like a phone booth or something, or just in a closed
he's
area.
in his crane. He's in his crane.
Oh, he's in his crane thing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and he's listening to like this motivational audio that says things like, you are needed, you are special, people are after you, or like people
like
want
you.
people like
People
you,
want
people
you.
want you. And it's like really ironic because like he's being hunted.
And then we get this really sad scene where this like guy who works, I guess, at the construction site takes a call from his granddaughter, and he's like, no granddad is as lucky as me to have grandchildren like you. And he puts the phone down and then immediately gets killed by Tim Shaw.
Yeah, this is like a real, like, having just watched Star Cops in its entirety, this is like a real reverse Chris Boucher situation of like everyone in Chris Boucher's stories, no matter how minor of a character they were, was like a total jerk and was just at everyone else's throats at all times. And this episode is like the antithesis to that. Like everyone's a good person. Everyone's out there for each other. Everyone like, has their family. Like this guy, loved his grandchildren or whatever. No matter how minor of a character he was, we still get that, and then he dies.
Yep. And the Doctor and Fam show up
Fam.
like slightly too late
they're
to
friends,
save him.
not family.
No, she calls them the Fam on the train. And she comes up with this plan where her, Ryan, and Yaz are going to go up the crane to save Carl, and Grace and Graham are going to evacuate the construction site, basically.
Right.
And so they climb the other crane and they start swinging the kind of crane arm over to meet the other one, but the tentacle monster, the gathering coils, attack the crane and disable it, so they're like not quite touching. There's like a gap between the two cranes, so the Doctor tells Carl to jump, and right as he's about to jump, Tim Shaw shows up and grabs him by the collar and drags him back onto the crane.
Right, so the Doctor makes a huge leap of faith and makes it.
Right. And Tim's like, I can just kill you. And she's like, ooh, you don't want to do that because I took this out of your pod. And it's the like homing device, or the return home, the fast return switch of the guy's pod, basically.
His teleporter bracelet.
His method to get home. Tim Shaw's like, damn. And she's like, if you kill him, then I destroy this and you'll be stuck here forever and you'll never get to be king. Then Tim's like, well, I can just detonate the bomb in your neck. And she's like, oh yeah, you could do that. And if you do that, I'll also just destroy this and you still won't be able to get home. And Tim's like, damn. But then he does it anyway. I guess he thinks that he can do it, that he can get away with it. But the Doctor has, I guess, sort of reversed the polarity or something, because in doing so, in activating it, it teleports all the DNA bombs out of the Fam into Tim Shaw's neck. And she's like, you've got like 5 bombs in your neck now. And he's like, oh no, oh no. The Doctor gives a speech about how she finally realizes how she's the Doctor. She's been trying to figure it out, but her brain finally rebooted thanks to adrenaline.
Right.
And that she's sorting out fair play across the universe. I think that's like her exact line.
Yeah. But meanwhile, and I actually forget how this all happened, but Gracie, like, falls.
She's attacking the tentacle monster because it's attacking the crane that Ryan, Yaz, and the Doctor are on, or just Yaz and Ryan now. And so she's got like an electric prod that Graham's going to turn on when she stabs the tentacle monster, and when she does it, the tentacle monster like grabs her as it's falling and she falls off the crane.
And dies. Did not see that coming whatsoever.
Well, so Kyle kicks Tim Shaw off the crane, but he like teleports or dies or something, and the Doctor like chastises Carl like, you had no right to do that. But then they go down and Grace is just like dying. She's like, promise me it'll be all right. And Graham's like, what? And she's like, without me. And then she dies.
And this is when we cut back to the Ryan's vlog from the beginning, and we find out that he was talking about Gracie.
Mm-hmm. And then we get Grace's funeral, and Graham talks about how she was a much better woman than he ever deserved, or ever, like, she was a much better person than him, that she should be here and not him. And then after the funeral, the Doctor asks him, like, why he said he was, like, why he shouldn't be alive or something. He says, like, oh, I had cancer, like, that's how I met Grace, and, like, I'm basically living on borrowed time because I'm, like, technically still in remission.
Right. But the Doctor doesn't have her TARDIS.
Or clothes.
Or clothes. So they go clothes shopping. Did you notice that, well, I mean, it's made explicit, it's made clear that the Doctor has her clothes paid for by Ryan and Yaz, but did you also notice that, like, she got her ears pierced on their money as well?
Maybe they were pierced already. Maybe she's a Time Lord and she just pierced her ears. You don't know. Well,
they definitely bought her earrings. Like, she wasn't wearing earrings before and now she is. So they either paid for her to pierce her ears or they just regenerated like pierced.
Yeah, maybe.
And they paid for earrings.
You don't know. We don't know how Time Lord ear piercings work.
I'd find it a bit odd if they could just, Time Lords could just regenerate new clothes and new articles of clothing for themselves, because we've never seen that yet.
Yeah, we did. The first Doctor's clothes literally changed into the second Doctor's clothes when he regenerated.
Oh, really?
And then they, like, after that, they realized that was kind of a weird thing to do.
I don't remember that. We didn't even see the first Doctor regenerate fully.
We see his face change, and then, like, when he stands up as the second Doctor, his clothes have just changed as well.
No, I don't know. I mean, that entire sequence was a little questionable in terms of both quality and understanding what's going on. So I'm going to say this is the first time that we have seen that, if we've seen it at all. But the Doctor also needs to, get out of there, find her TARDIS. So she spends, however long, a couple days, maybe a week, putting together a device that can, teleport her out, which she uses thanks to the help of Yaz, Ryan, and Graham. And they're all transported into, like, deep space, and they die. And Chris Chibnall ends Doctor Who, his first episode. It's like, take that, Doctor Who.
I don't think the Doctor didn't expect the three of them to go with her, because she was like, I'll see you all sometime. And then they, like, go, when the machine turns on, I guess she made some miscalculation. They all go, and they end up in space. Like I said last season, no spoilers, because you were like, surely they don't go the whole season without the TARDIS. But so far, we're an episode in, and the TARDIS is still who knows where. And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah. So I don't know if you had some things you wanted to touch on here.
I just wanted to talk briefly about how the 13th Doctor's character in this episode is, like, very much a reaction to the 12th Doctor's farewell speech, where he's like, hey, always try to be kind, like, love hard, run fast.
She does run around a lot.
And she basically is, like, everything the 12th Doctor was saying, like, his next incarnation should be, like, kind and help everybody out. She basically, the 12th Doctor started off and he was like, am I a good man? The 13th Doctor, and she starts off and like, I'm just a traveler. Sometimes I see the things that are wrong and I help put them right. But otherwise, I'm just traveling around looking for fun, basically. She reminds me a lot also of the 5th Doctor in her, like, upbeatness.
Yeah.
5th Doctor was always the most, like, upbeat Doctor in the classic show. So. She's, like, very upbeat, a lot more optimistic than a lot of the reboot Doctors we've had. I feel like they've all been, like, pretty cynical in many ways.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say all of them have been, 9 through 12.
And she is kind of a reaction to that, in that we haven't seen any cynicism from her yet, at least in this episode so far. And I think that's interesting. And, I'm interested to see where her character is going to go.
Well, you probably remember these pretty well. You watched them a year ago.
I do remember this season pretty well, but it's interesting to see, like, where she's going to go next season, or Series 13, which she's confirmed to be returning in as well. So,
heck yeah, the 13th Doctor for the 13th season.
Nice.
Series, whatever.
Nice. the first time it's lined up since the first Doctor in season 1.
Yeah. Well, there is one thing I kind of wanted to touch on here as well. I know we kind of talked about some of the more subtle aspects, or how this season seems to be going for a little more subtlety. But weirdly enough, there also seems to be more like overblown, over-explanation, like almost but I think not in the sense of like the Moffat era over-explanation, but more in the sense of like kid friendliness. And I don't know, I'll have to see where this goes, but it does, like, there's stuff like the Doctor has this line, this isn't verbatim, but she goes like, it outran us, it's fast, I'm slower because of all this fizzing inside, and like, okay, like, we get it, it's faster than you, like, we get it, you're suffering regeneration sickness or weirdness, like, I don't know, it just feels like, and perhaps this is because, you know, drawing a new audience, this is a new era of the show and stuff like that, but there's also stuff like where the Doctor explains how her previous idea about the Earth being used as a battleground was wrong, and she's like, yes, I know I said X before, but now I think X is wrong, and now I think X is wrong because I think Y is, you know, right. And just, there's that overblown, like, almost kid-friendly nature to that, where it's over-explained type thing.
Doctor Who has always been technically a kids show, though, so...
Yeah, but I feel like also it's kind of lost that over the years, especially with like 2005 to 2017.
Doesn't
and now
mean
it's
it can't
maybe coming
regain
back.
it.
No, and I think it is somewhat regaining that. But it also feels weird to me because there were those more subtle aspects, but then there's also this sort of stuff as well. So I have to see where that goes.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I remembered back to kind of what you said either last week or 2 weeks ago, where it's like, all right, in this episode, we clearly get like the 13th Doctor has no idea what's going on, and she's just like playing it all by ear.
Yeah.
Unlike the 11th and to a lesser extent the 12th, who kind of always had a good grasp of the situation, and to a lesser extent 10 as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's also partially why she reminds me a lot of the 5th Doctor, because I feel like a lot of his episodes are him going like, "This is just gonna figure this out, just figure this out like as we go."
In terms of how much I liked this episode, I would say, again, I think the companion dynamic is the best it's been in years. And I loved that about it.
Mighty high praise.
I'm eager to see where they go with that. There are other things that I really don't like about this episode too, like how the fact that they use the extra 10 minutes that they had for this first episode for just like an action scene. And it's no secret that I kind of somewhat dislike action scenes, and I tend to just zone out during them. I like the more not exposition heavy, but I don't know. I just like more dull, less actiony scenes. So I just like that they use that extra 10 minutes for that reason.
That's fair.
That's just me, though. I'm sure there's a lot of action fans out there who like the action and edge of your seat.
You might not like next week's episode then.
Well, I just like when shows give you a lot to think about, and it's not that action scenes can't do that, it's just that they usually don't.
Well, it's interesting because that's like been a criticism of this season, is that it's the opposite, is that like in this season there's not a lot of like action, and it's a very what's the word? Contemplative season. Very kind of low key.
Well, that's for me, you know.
And
I
a
like
lot of
that
people
stuff.
like criticize that. So the next season, Chibnall was like, "All right, guys, I guess I'm going back to the way that everybody likes. I tried something new, and you guys didn't like it, so." So, anyway, we never mentioned this yet, but we're basically cutting the sonic screwdriver segment from the show because it's just becoming so overblown, and it's like it's used every week for almost the same things, and it's just.
And we weren't
tedious.
having fun with it anymore. It became like a tedious like
chore
to do.
So we cut that. Maybe we'll replace it with something else later on if we think of something new. But for now, we just go straight to the quotes. And I do have one quote this episode, which I thought was kind of funny. I don't know if you have any quotes.
No, I don't have any. I totally forgot, actually.
When someone was like, don't you know, like asking the Doctor, like, don't you know your name? Like, what's your name? And she's like, well, I don't remember. And then they're like, well, don't you know your own name? And she goes, well, of course I know it. I just don't remember it. Kind of subtly keying into the difference there between knowing and remembering. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And so we have an email this week. If there's nothing else to talk about, we have an email from RG. Let me just go ahead and pull that up. Thoughts about the woman who fell to Earth. Hello, fellow space travelers. Probably too late with my thoughts on this episode, but just in case you weren't, because we did a retrospective last week. Needless to say, I loved it. Fleshed out characters, a despicable and disgusting baddie, in-jokes about the Doctor being female, the lovely Grace, real consequences, and so many other things. I enjoy that the whole thing is centered around Sheffield. That also lets the Sonic get crafted out of good old Sheffield steel. I still have some good old spoons made out of that stuff.
Wow.
At first, I didn't like the new Sonic, but it has grown on me. Our new Doctor is scrappy. No Sonic, she'll make one, probably. Clothes don't fit. It's been a while since she bought women's clothing, but she'll jump in and have a go nonetheless. No TARDIS, she can build a thingamajig to get back to it. A baddie, up a tower she goes with her new friends to face it. The scene where she remembers she's the Doctor is delivered with that well-worn confidence the Doctor has been known for throughout her many regens. This Britain is different. It's not full of white people for a start. This is true. We have our first companion with a disability. This will be interesting. The TARDIS is now full of different skin colors, genders, and ages. Variety is the spice of life. If the series continues like this, I will enjoy the ride. Stay brilliant, RG.
Yeah, so I think you're, well, first of all, thanks for emailing, but I think you're touching on some things that we neglected to mention or something that I kind of wanted to discuss. First of all, the new sonic screwdriver design, which we didn't mention. The Doctor obviously creates her new screwdriver in this episode, and it looks totally different than anything we've seen before.
Right.
It almost looks like something you'd see on like Star Wars or like the ancient alien tech from Alien, you know, when they go in the ship type thing.
Yeah, it's very homemade. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of pieced together.
Very homemade. But apparently this confirms you can make a sonic screwdriver out of Earth technology. Oh, actually, no, she says she uses some of Tim Shaw's technology out of his travel pod.
Ah, dang it.
So, take that back.
Another thing you mentioned is the consequences, and I can't believe like I didn't like
consequences can be rewritten.
Yeah, and finally, like it's the case for like the first time in by the show's time, like 10 years, that consequences can't be rewritten, and Grace is actually dead. I think. I hope.
They could. They totally could rewrite that when she gets the TARDIS.
They could, but like I don't think that that's going to happen.
It's true, because it went like 2 weeks and they had the funeral and everything. They're like they're doubling down on this.
Yeah, and I'm glad for that. Not in the sense that like I'm glad Gracie's dead. She was an awful person, but like in the sense that like finally consequences can no longer be rewritten as long as you do it well.
As long as you don't rewrite the consequences well. Hang on, what?
Just scratch that part. I'm finally glad that consequences can no longer be rewritten. Or are no longer being rewritten.
Yeah, because they still can be rewritten. They're just not so far.
And I think another thing that RG kind of touched on in this email was really interesting is that this is like a new, not interpretation, but like not version, but like what's the word? A new like depiction of Britain where it's not all white people, but I would say that even since 2005, like Doctor Who has never and has always like historically accurately portrayed Britain as like not being just white people.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's the case. I think I would say that with confidence. But weirdly enough, like having been to Britain, like coming from somewhere where like white actually isn't the majority, like going there, I'm like, oh, like shoot, like this is a lot of white people. Like that's my personal reaction. But like, yeah,
yeah, interesting perspective. Interesting perspective.
Yeah,
yeah, but no, yeah, you hit on a lot of good points, RG, and it's like you're just always glad. I'm always glad to hear from you because you always usually hit on things that we neglected to mention, like you just did. So,
yeah. And well, now would also be a good time to mention that RG is actually going to be joining us again 2 weeks from now for Rosa.
You're right. Episode 3, Series 11. So she'll be back on the show to give her thoughts to us in audio form instead of having to email us. And yeah, so thank you for emailing us, RG. Again, always good to hear from you. Hoping to hear from you for Ghost Monument. And if anybody else would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the 13th Doctor. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Trust Your Doctor. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time, we're going to be watching The Ghost Monument. But until then, the end.